right. So today I'm chatting with Amy from Dryland Revival. Spring finally decided to show up. So I'm excited to talk to her a little bit about gardening and specifically what they do, which is really cool gardening. um, yeah. So Amy, why don't you just introduce yourself and talk a little bit about Dryland and what you guys do?
Yeah. My name's Amy Hendricks. I'm the lead designer for Dryland Revival. And we're a unique landscaping company in Spokane. And we do exclusively regenerative landscaping, which is a kind of landscaping that takes notes from regenerative agriculture. So we're doing a lot to benefit soil health and do dense plantings of mostly native and drought tolerant plants.
Cool. I know you guys are the only ones, right, who can do the Spokane smart gardens. Spokanescape, I think it's called.
We aren't the only providers, or they call us
okay.
pros that can do Spokanescape, but all of our designs could qualify a client if they meet the other requirements for the program. All of our designs are drought tolerant. Most of our designs, some clients want grass, but most of our designs are a full sod tear out, which is a big requirement of one of the Spokanescape tenants.
Yeah, cool. Okay. How many of those like tear out kind of jobs have you guys done, do you think?
Oh, I mean, over 20.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
We've only been around for a year in February.
Okay.
So this will be our first full season of doing all the work and stuff. And yeah, so we're really excited to get more people yards that are more earth friendly and water tolerant or drought tolerant and colorful.
Yeah, awesome. So let's talk a little bit just about like gardening in general. What do you feel like is the right time for people to start digging in the ground and doing stuff here in Spokane?
Yeah, I know. Everyone wants to be out in their shorts and t-shirts when it's 50 degrees after
like it's 50 degrees. It feels warm. I don't care. Yeah.
Yeah, but the earth takes its time. And the biggest thing is soil is saturated, especially after a high precipitation year like we just had. So as tempting as it is to clean up your yard, this is actually a really important time for us to leave leaves on the ground, especially on top of our soil, because all those beneficial insects that have been bedding in that, butterflies, ladybugs, all beneficial insects from your yard, they're in those leaves. And if you rake them up and put them in your green bin, you're taking those away from your landscape. So it's really important.
I never knew that. My gosh.
So you really want to make sure that it's a lot warmer out and you're just seeing more insect activity, and then it will be okay for you to move those leaves to a better part of your yard. I'm always a proponent of keeping the leaves around to mulch if you can, because that's good nitrogen for your soil. But in general,
pine needles, and like I live in the valley and we have a lot of pine needles.
You can use those for, you can use those for a mulch or a pathway, but I wouldn't mix them into the soil because they can acidify the soil.
Yeah.
So in general, and there's lots of like kind of old wives' tales about when you can plant or not in Spokane. Some people say after Mother's Day. Some people say until there's no snow on Mount Spokane, all kinds of things. But in general, it's May 15 to October 5. We have about 180-day growing season. And you can plant before then, and you can plant after that, but you're just at a higher risk of a hard frost damaging your plants. At Dryland Revival, we're working mostly with native varieties, which are more fuss-free than something that you would get at like Home Depot Garden Center. These are plants that know our winters, our cold, our precipitation, and our heat. So you can technically plant all year round, but it just is a matter of how hot it is, how much water they're getting. And then the other thing that not a lot of people think about is soil health. So when you're digging into the soil, you're disrupting the microbial action that's happening. With a lot of precipitation, the soil can get very wet, and a lot of plants don't like that really soggy feeling unless they've already been established there. So it's important for you to go out in your garden, grab a handful and squeeze it in your palm. And if it clumps together and doesn't fall apart, it's not quite time to begin planting yet. But if you can ball up soil and it kind of crumbles out of your hand, then the soil's ready. It's not too wet.
That is fascinating. So talk about the difference between, like, I know xeriscaping is kind of a term that I've heard, which is, don't tell anybody I'm from Los Angeles, but so we do a lot of that type of gardening in California. Do you find that, is there a difference between like xeriscaping versus just working with native plants?
Yeah, that's a really common question that we get, or we get a lot of clients who want a xeriscape. So xera comes from the Greek word dry. And so they're a Venn diagram. So native plants are on this side, xeriscaping is on this side, and there is quite a bit of overlap. A lot of native plants are lower water requirements because they're acclimated to our current weather and precipitation needs. And as the years go on, our climate, unfortunately, is getting drier here. We're just getting less precipitation. So xeriscape is when the aim is low water consumption or very minimal. Right. And then some people mispronounce it, but it's actually a whole different thing, is xeroscaping, which means there's no water. And as much as people would love that kind of fuss-free living, that means that you have landscaped with rock. All plants need some form of precipitation, even in the desert. Plants are very resilient who live in drier places, but when people ask us for a landscape that they don't have to water at all, that's just not possible. And especially if you're, mixing in other things like rock mulches and stuff that raise the temperature of your area even more.
You cut out a little bit for a second there. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So, xeriscaping is definitely has some similarities to native plant landscaping. But there are some native plants that, we have a gigantic river that runs through our city. So there are plants that do really well on the riverbank, different willows and other plants that like to have what we call wet feet.
Wet feet, yeah.
And so some people want those things in their landscape.
Well, it really just depends on the layout of your space. Like if you have a low point or something that's going to stay really wet, like you would want to plant accordingly.
Exactly.
What are some common mistakes that you see people make when they try to garden with native plants?
Yeah. Well, I don't know if this is just specific to native plant landscaping, but a lot of people start too big. They're on Pinterest or social media and they see these gorgeous gardens. And something that's so important is to just start small. Pick one small bed or start growing one little area and then expand from there. Native plants in general are fuss-free, as I've said, but if you're new to gardening, you need to start small. And so a lot of people, they'll see the pictures, have a plant list and just go, go, go. And they won't really be thinking about bloom times or height, or even they'll add a ton of fertilizer to an area. And native plants don't like a lot of that kind of thing. They like to be planted, watered a bit for the first 3 years, and then left for the most part. So people get a little bit intense when it comes to wanting something that looks really good. Yeah. Yeah.
Where do you guys recommend nearby that are good sources for local plants, since we know Home Depot is maybe our best bet?
Yeah, if Home Depot is what you have, it's what you have. But we do have a list of native nurseries that we like to frequent. Plants of the Wild, Desert Jewels, Floralia Nursery, Blue Moon Nursery, Green Acres, Judy's on Northwest Boulevard. There's a lot of places that have access to native plants, and that we'll have like a whole section available to clients if they're interested in native varieties.
Oh, perfect. I'll definitely link to those in the description below.
Yeah.
And then like, I feel like this concept ties in so well with like native planting and xeriscaping in general. But what are some ways that people can like save money when they see their beautiful Pinterest garden that they want to recreate? What kind of tips do you have for making that more economical?
Yeah. So the best thing is actually tearing out your lawn and planting drought tolerant plants. This is going to cut down a ton on your water bill, even if you don't see a huge change the first few years, because you're going to still be watering those plants. A lot of people don't realize that lawns are actually very high maintenance, and they require a lot of input. And because we just like, auto pay our water bill or whatever, we're not really noticing that that big green ocean is actually taking up a ton of our money. Not even taking into account any fertilizer, time that you spend mowing and weed whacking and all of that. So that is a huge way that people can save money. Another thing is to repurpose materials. If you have an old house, like I have a 1926 house, we find bricks and even basalt rocks around. You can use those things in your landscape. And I've found actually quite large landscaping boulders that I can put in my landscape just by digging down a few feet. Of course, calling a Vista first if you're digging.
Definitely.
And let's see, what other things
Well, I think
can
one of
people...
the things I was also thinking about is my general philosophy, I don't really know what I'm doing. I just like being outside. So you guys take
Yeah.
this with a grain of salt. But my thought is like, the more thought I can put into like, if this is the right plant for the right space, like the more
Yes.
likely it's going to be successful. And then the more likely it is that the like amount of money I spent on that is going to come back to me, or, it's going to be well spent and not be dead in a year.
Yeah. And connected to that is plant perennials, because every 2 to 4 years, perennials often like to be divided. So you can take your shovel, split a plant up and put it in a different part of your yard, and you have 2 plants. And that just is over the course of a couple of years. Another
What do you
thing,
think
and
is
this
the
is
best time of year for splitting plants?
spring or fall.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. When it's a little bit more mild and they're not having to struggle to recover from injury from a shovel. Another thing, and this is something that we do at Dryland with all of our designs, is to plant densely. And this is a note from regenerative agriculture. When you plant densely, you have a ton of vegetation that covers the ground over time, as things grow in. And so you're going to have to weed less. You need less mulch. There's just a lot less input, and the ground cover will keep the ground more wet. And so you're not going to have to water as much. So planting densely, even though it's an initial expense, can actually help you in the long run.
Yeah, that is a good tip. One thing I always was surprised by is how I feel like I think I planned for how big a plant is going to be. And then like a year and a half later, I'm like, I definitely did not think about how big that plant was going to be. So one thing I always am, now that I'm older and wiser, try to stay mindful of is like, you have to think about what it's going to grow into, not just how cute it looks in its pot right now.
Right. Yeah.
And one of the ways I like to save money too is just starting with a smaller plant. I mean, sometimes we like the really big, beautiful impact of a bigger plant, but it's going to be that big by next year or whatever, so it's not as sexy, but it can help you save money.
They say on the 3rd year, the plant is leaping. It's going to be close to where it is, unless it's like a tree. That takes a while. But plants take time to grow in, and unfortunately, our society doesn't have a lot of patience when it comes to that. It really can save a lot of money because the difference in price from like a gallon plant to bigger is quite a bit. So it's
Is that
worth
something
doing.
you guys are willing to work with people on, like going smaller on the
Absolutely.
plants as a way to
Yeah.
do it? Cool.
Yeah.
Let's see. Oh, I wanted to ask, do you know if there's any like native edible plants or like,
Yeah. There's
close
tons.
to native?
Yeah.
Tons.
So, I mean, we're not the first people to talk about this, right? Like indigenous tribes have the corner on this. They've been using these native plants for many reasons, medicinal and otherwise, for a long time. So this is from their wisdom. So there's so many, I can't name them all, but there's a lot of berries, like golden currant. There's choke cherry. There's coyote mint, which is used for teas. There's, everyone knows echinacea. It's the purple coneflower. That's been used by the Plains Indians, I believe, for a long time, for medicinal purposes in tea. There's bee balm. There's wild bergamot, which is like a natural antiseptic. Yarrow can be used in all kinds of things. A lot of people make yarrow salve, but it can also be consumed for like toothaches.
Oh my gosh, that's so
Yeah,
cool. Do you have,
so there's
maybe
a lot.
after we get off, if you have like a resource that you like for some of these things, you can connect me with that.
Yeah.
Um, let's see. So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, since you guys focus specifically on like this type of regenerative landscaping, what
Mhm.
has been some of the feedback from your clients over the last year? Like, how do they like the experience? Are they happy with the outcomes?
Yeah.
Anything that they want us to know that we should watch out for?
Yeah, I think people are surprised by how much they are saving in time and maintenance when they tear out their turf grass, especially. Um, they didn't expect that things would be so easy switching over to more native plants and less grass. And I mean, a lot of our clients, they boast our signs in the front yard for a reason. They're wanting other people to kind of like join them in this, hey, this was a really good experience. And I have a lot lower water bill and I don't have to mow and I don't have to fertilize. And I'm also helping native pollinators and things through these plantings. So our clients are really happy with the
That's
product that they
awesome.
have. Yeah.
Yeah, I really it's hard to remember how much maintenance the yard takes. And
Yeah.
it's like we forget every winter, and then every spring, my husband is like, no, it's
Yeah.
like every week. It's so
Yeah.
busy.
Yeah.
Cool. And then, oh, I just wanted to know, are you from the Spokane area? Did you grow up around here?
I didn't know. I'm from the West Side and I came
Okay,
here to go to university and I've been here for 18 years. So
nice.
yeah,
That's
now it's
awesome.
home.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
What do you love about Spokane?
I love how central the river is. There's so much going on right around the river, and I love that there's a growing movement, even since I've been here, of people wanting to return to natural spaces. We've seen, I mean, we're down at the river all the time in Riverside, and there's just a ton more people coming and checking out these native or natural places, and um, I feel really grateful to be a part of a city where people are starting to pay attention to that.
Oh yeah, that is super cool. Oh, and then I wanted to talk a little bit about costs.
Hmm.
Um, so like let's say, I don't know if there's any sort of like numbers you can kind of go give us, but like if I'm tearing out 100 square feet of grass, for instance, and replacing it with natives, do you have any sort of number like how much per square feet or something?
Yeah. Yeah. So we have a couple of packages online and it does kind of depend on the site. So I can't say
Of course, yeah.
specifically what people will be charged. But if people want just a plan to go off of, so I'd come out and do a site-specific plan and give you a plant list and a plant map, and you want to do all the work. It's called DIY with Dryland. That's $750, and that's a starting price. If you wanted us to do any other work or recommend drip irrigation or anything, then the price would go up from there. And then we also have a few packages that are kind of pre-designed templates where we basically give you a curated list of native plants. And I believe that that's for 500 square feet. And we deliver the plants to your site and then you put them in. Then we can also do an install of that as well as edging and stuff. So yeah, that is a great option for people if they want native plants, but aren't really sure if, the ones that they want are available or whatever. We can make those available to you, can come and deliver them to your site, and then you can go from there. Oh, it's 300 square feet, excuse me.
Okay.
500.
And how much is that one?
That one starts at 1,500.
Oh, okay. Man, your pricing is great. Let's see. I think that's kind of all my questions. Is there anything else you really have a burning desire for the people of Spokane to know about dryland or gardening?
Yeah. Well, the other thing, we talked a little bit about this at the beginning, about our commitment to making Spokanescape friendly designs. But in addition to that, we are leaning hard on the practices of regenerative landscaping. And a huge thrust of that is soil health. And so we're going to come to your site if we do any kind of installation, and we're going to help build your soil. A lot of people don't really think about soil, but if your soil is not doing well, your plants will not do well. So we inoculate with mycorrhizal inoculant. And that basically feeds all of the delightful microbes in the soil, and it helps roots get established, and your plants will be a lot healthier. In addition to that, we're putting compost and things that are going to help your plants be healthy, and then also feed the soil. Not only soil health, but we're working with Keystone native plants. And these are plants, it's so amazing. Our native pollinators have co-evolved with these native varieties of our region, which means that these native plants are making specific pollen for our native pollinators. Without these Keystone natives, these native pollinators don't have the right kind of pollen to keep living.
Interesting. Yeah.
So we are bringing these Keystone native plants to people's yards. And that excites us so much because we need our pollinators. And planting flowers now is just not enough. I mean, we see a lot in the news, all the stuff about bee deaths and hive decay and things like that. So we're taking it a step further and saying we are committed to planting these Keystone natives. Things like goldenrod, western aster. There's a whole list of things that
okay, well, I will probably schedule you to come to my house and make that list for me so I can start incorporating them in.
Yeah.
And do you find, like, I mean, I would imagine that there's benefit of just like even just starting to incorporate natives into your landscape could be like a great place to start. You don't have to tear out your whole lawn and start over.
Yeah.
My daughter's terrified of bees, so I'm pretty sure she's going to get mad at me for having.
Well, it's not just bees either. It's not just bees either. I mean, milkweed is such a beneficial plant for butterflies, and there's a ton of pollinators, birds, and things that we don't really think of. Bats, even.
Cool.
And when it comes to pollinators, so yeah, some people might be afraid of bees, but they're important, but that's not all.
Awesome. All right. Well, this was so good. I'll link to some resources in the description below when I post this on YouTube.
Awesome.
And then I'll also include some photos from your awesome, beautiful work that you've done that we can share. And I, look forward to hopefully working with you guys.
Great. Thanks so much, Heather. It's nice to meet you.
It was good to meet you too.
Yeah. See ya.
I'll talk to you later. Bye.